What would you say is the most complicated relationship that you have in your life? I think most of us would immediately think to maybe relationships with partners, spouses, parents, children. But really, the most complicated relationship you will ever have in your life is the relationship you have with yourself. It is so complicated, so nuanced. And the one thing that is constant is you can never get away from being with yourself. And one of the things that we all struggle with is forgiving ourselves, letting things go. All too often, we beat ourselves up with the things that we shoulda, coulda, woulda done, the things that we regret, the things we wish we'd said, the things we wish we hadn't said. And yet, that is one of the heaviest energies that you can carry with you. If you listened a few weeks ago, I did an episode where I talked about something my mentor said to me. He talked about the concept of treating life like a backpack, that every day you put on your backpack and you put things in that backpack. And so these are the things that happen, the regrets, the things that make us mad, the things that make us happy. And he says that at the end of the day, we need to take that backpack off, empty it out, and treat the next day as a new day. And yet, especially when it comes to regrets, to shame, to guilt, we carry those in our backpack. Every day we get up and we carry those things in our backpack and they weigh us down. I was reading something recently that is from Dr. David Hawkins. I think he passed away a few years ago, but he was a psychiatrist, a physician, and a spiritual teacher. And he was talking about the fact that our emotions are energy, that they have an energy to them, and that depending on what emotions you're feeling, what emotions you're carrying around with you, they can either be very heavy or vibrate at a really low level, or they can be light and vibrate at a really high level. And he talked about the fact that some of the vibrations that are the lowest, that are the densest, the heaviest, are feelings of shame, of guilt, of apathy, of fear. And those tend to be the things that we use to beat ourselves up. Those tend to be the things that we hold on to. And yet, the ones that we should be holding on to, he talks about the fact that the feelings, the emotions that have the light vibrations, that are the happy ones, are the things that are higher up on the vibrational scale, are things like love and peace and joy. And so how much of our time do we spend in those low vibrational areas? How much of our time do we spend lacking forgiveness for ourselves? I would say that the greatest gift that'll free us and allow us to be all that we're meant to be is forgiveness of ourselves. I was recently rereading, actually I've read this book many times and it's one that I come back to. And it's a book called Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends Upon It by Kamal Ravikant. I so highly recommend this book when it comes to reestablishing a relationship with yourself. If you're struggling with self-worth, self-love, this is such a great book. He has such practical exercises in here that you can do. And it's his story of how he found self-love. And I want to share with you something that he says about forgiveness. And it's in a chapter that he titles, First Forgive Yourself. He says, before you step into the future, you must release the shackles of the past. I don't understand why we work so hard to forgive others without forgiving the only one we have any power over, ourselves. All freedom starts within. Even if you want to forgive others, you must forgive yourself first. Only the free can free another. It took me a while to understand this, but once I applied it, this added a level to loving myself I hadn't experienced before. It's easy and absolutely liberating. Imagine letting go of what you've held against yourself. That's what this does. And it leads you perfectly to the vow to love yourself. Wow, the line that he says there, that you can't forgive others if you can't forgive yourself. And that freedom comes from forgiving ourselves. So, from a practical perspective, how do you forgive yourself? One of the most powerful exercises I've ever done for forgiving myself was, first and foremost, writing a letter to myself. I wrote a letter where I wrote out all of the things that I wanted to forgive myself for, all of the shame that I held, all of the guilt that I had. I wrote a letter to myself telling myself why I wanted to let go of these things. I wrote a letter to myself saying how they were holding me back, how they were weighing me down. And this is something that, quite honestly, can bring up a lot of feeling, a lot of emotions. It's something that you might need to come back to over and over again. Because once you start allowing yourself to feel those feelings, once you start allowing yourself to realize the things that you need to forgive within yourself, it can truly be a really emotional exercise. And so I suggest that maybe this is something that you want to do a few times repeatedly. And what I did with that letter is I actually tore it up. In my case, I tore it up. I know there are many practices that say burn it, flush it, but just that exercise of tearing it up, the energy of tearing it up, letting it go, freeing yourself. And one thing that I want you to recognize and to remember is something that I shared previously in an episode of this podcast, where I said that you cannot move forward if you haven't recognized from a place of what is it that you need, what is it that's holding you down? What is it that's anchoring you down? You cannot move forward unless you've released yourself. And one of the things too is to recognize that things are what they are. You cannot go back and change the past. And all too often we beat ourselves up and think about, oh, if only I shoulda, I coulda, I woulda. But here's the reality. Things weren't different. Things happened as they did. And you know why you can never go back and change them? Because it's the past. It only exists in your mind. The past only exists in your mind. And all too often we hold ourselves down, we anchor ourselves because we keep reliving the past. And so by allowing yourself, doing a practice, whatever that practice is for you, writing a letter to yourself, journaling, whether it might be going to the person you wronged and asking for forgiveness, but that has to be a place of releasing yourself, recognizing that you can't change what is. You cannot change what happened in the past. All you can do is to judge yourself on who you become as you move forward, who you choose to become as you move forward. So my suggestion to you is truly the greatest gift that you can give yourself today is to let go of those things that you're beating yourself up for. Forgive yourself for those mistakes. Forgive yourselves for those things you wish you'd done differently. And allow yourself, free yourself to move forward. Give yourself the gift of forgiveness. And I want you to always remember that regardless of your past, regardless of what you've done before, regardless of the shame, the guilt that you carry, you are worthy. You are worthy to be, to do, to have whatever it is your heart desires. Thank you for making me a part of your day today.